Hi, everyone, and welcome back to The Things We Know. We have not recorded in a bit, so this is kind of fun.
Yeah, I've missed this.
I know. Although that being said, we just recorded 9 interviews yesterday because we were on Podapalooza, so that went really, really fast. I am
That was
trying to
fun.
get to there's my script. Okay. So yes, it's fun to be back, and we're excited to have a guest right out of the gate.
Yeah, totally. Today we're talking about something that doesn't get enough airtime in the business and personal growth world, and it's the decisions we make when we're hurting. I love this. The ones that make sense at the time that cost us later, and the
Mm.
hard, beautiful work of recognizing those patterns and finally changing them.
Our guest today has lived that story from the inside out. Athena Dean Holtz is a professional speaker, servant leadership mentor, and publishing pioneer with more than 40 years of experience in ministry, nonprofit leadership, and Christian publishing.
She founded Redemption Press, recognized as a best Christian workplace 3 years running, and is the author of multiple books, including her most recent, No Longer Hidden. You Cannot Resist What You Do Not Recognize. She is also a former radio host known for her transparency and hard won wisdom.
Athena, welcome to The Things We Know. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just a delight to be here with both of you.
Yay.
Thank you. I know you've been on other podcasts and you've been a radio host, but I'm just curious because we always like to ask our guests, how does it feel to hear yourself introduced?
It always is like, oh, it, yeah. Like, really? Do you know me? Do you walk around and watch me do crazy things? You probably wouldn't say
Yes.
that.
Right.
Well, isn't that funny though? Because it's like we're quick to dismiss all the amazing things that we've accomplished and think of only the things that we don't do as well or whatever.
Totally.
Right.
Okay, so let's kick it off. 40 years is a long time to be in ministry, publishing, and leadership. But we always like to know the human story underneath the bio. So can you take us back? Who were you before all of this? And what were you running from or running toward?
Well, I was probably, mid 20s on. Um, Networker, marketing, all things, building an organization and, doing very well. I mean, definitely success was my medication of choice
Mm.
without even knowing it. So I didn't even know I was medicating anything at that point, but that was what I was good at. My dad, you know, started his career selling Encyclopedia Britannica door to door and ended up being a senior vice president, making millions in the 60s. So,
Wow.
I kind of more take after him than I do my mom, who was, very quiet and I was not. And so I was always, boy, if I could get excited about a product or a service, selling it was always an easy thing to do. And so at a point in my life where I had been in insurance and securities was my kind of last um, successful business before I went into working with Vietnam veterans and their family
Mm.
members in the late 80s. But I was one of the few women who made it to senior vice president with what was at the time A.L. Williams, which is now Primerica Financial
Oh,
Services, I
yeah.
think that's
Uh-huh.
their current name. Um, so that was something that I loved doing, and I loved the people, and it was, taking people out of expensive insurance and putting them into term insurance and mutual funds. So that was kind of my sweet spot until my husband was gifted a 501(c)(3) that worked with Vietnam veterans and their family members. And the guy who founded it passed away, and he was pretty much kind of just worked one-on-one with veterans who were in prison. And so he would just go to the local prisons, and work with them there. So I got a chance to just help him, like use my giftings to help him create this kind of small group format in churches across the country before really small groups were a thing. They weren't a thing back then.
Wow.
And Vietnam veterans weren't very well regarded back then either. Um, so the whole emphasis on that nonprofit was helping Vietnam veterans and their wives and their kids understand this thing called PTSD,
Mm.
post-traumatic stress disorder, back before that was a thing. I mean, now it's a household word, everybody knows what it is. Back then it was like, what is this thing? And beginning to help people understand what it was and why when we see something completely, utterly devastating, traumatic, somebody gets, you know, killed in front of us, like Vietnam veterans saw that all the time. You
Yeah.
would be crazy if you didn't end up with PTSD, right?
Right.
So um, that was just my life. And uh, in that ministry of it was called Point Man. Um, that was the first time I ever had anything to do with publishing a book because my husband at the time, who was a Vietnam veteran, wrote a book on post-traumatic stress from a layman's. I mean, he wasn't a VA doctor or psychiatrist or psychologist or anything like that. And, you know, their kind of thing was just take the meds and learn to cope. And we wanted to give them a little more, more of a faith-based vision for dealing with the, the fallout of
Yeah.
seeing the trauma that they had seen. So that was my beginning of getting into publishing because he wrote this manuscript. It was great information, but nobody wanted to publish it. And when we finally met someone who would tell us the truth about the manuscript, it like needed a complete rewrite overhaul,
Um,
but we didn't know. So we were just sending it to all these New York publishers, and they're like, no, thank you. And so we met a guy who said, you know what, I can do the rewrite and I can help you get the cover design and get the layout and get the ISBN number and do all the things and I can get you 10,000 copies for $1 a piece. That
wow.
was 1986. And we're like, sweet. I mean, that just to us felt like an answer to prayer. And so we just moved ahead as if we had the money, which we did not. And this guy just showed up a week later and said, hey, I love what you guys do. I heard you had a need. Here you go. Wrote a check for the
Wow.
entire thing. And we went through those 10,000 books in less than 2 years.
Mm.
And we were in the middle of being in the green room, getting ready to go on the 700 Club to talk about their veterans event that we were on faculty for. And we met this guy who was a manager of this group, this music group. We're like, yeah, here we are. We have one box left after 2 years. And he's like, you went through 10,000 copies in 2 years? I think I could get you a publishing deal. And we're
Wow.
like, that's really good because we lived on that money. We didn't have any left to go and reprint. And so he did. He got us a deal with Multnomah Publishers out of Oregon.
Yeah.
And for the next, I don't know, maybe 8 years, they sold about 40,000 copies. And then we got the rights back to that and continued to. So that was like the third edition. And to date, it has 250,000 copies sold and over 1 million in print because, we've given the rights to print and give away to like
Oh,
the
nice.
VFW and places like that. So that was kind of, I never thought about writing a book or being a publisher or any of those things. It was just, we had what would be called today a successful self-publishing experience that proved to a publisher that we had something worth taking a risk on.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's an
I
amazing
love
story.
this. So your book, No Longer Hidden, feels
Yeah.
really personal. So Can you just say a little bit about that? Like
You
what was
bet.
the hidden part?
Well, yeah, let's see how I can distill that down. I just in the last like 3 or 4 years, my now husband um, kind of facilitated a merger. He's just turned 79. He wants to be able to, leave the all the congregation that he started with 38 years before in good hands. And so he got that going and it kind of went south. And the younger pastor and his wife basically shoved him out,
Mm,
which now that I know what I know, that happens probably more often than not
mm,
in that kind of situation with the merger. Um, but I really had a hard time forgiving them, like a really hard time.
Mm.
And at some point when I just like begged, God, would you just help me forgive them from my heart? I know they don't deserve it. They haven't said they're sorry.
mm.
There is absolutely no reason for them to get off the hook. But I need some peace because it was like spiritual whack-a-mole. Every stinking time somebody said something, I just get all mad again and
Yeah.
could not deal with that anger. And I'm not like an angry person. So it was a weird sensation to have that going on in my life. And I finally was just really begging God, please help me forgive them from my heart, because saying I forgive them wasn't doing anything. It wasn't working. And in the midst of that, uh, I was able to see some connections, some similarities between just some spiritually dark uh, influences, shall we say, that I had experienced 20 years earlier.
Mm.
And now here my husband is experiencing the very same things.
Really?
And like,
Hmm.
because when I lost my first publishing company, the minute it went out of my hands and into their hands, they cut my pay in half with no, okay, I turned that off and I turned it down. I'm so sorry.
No,
Okay.
it's fine.
Um, okay, so they cut my pay in half with no notice.
Oh,
And that was like the beginning of them. I was the founder, so they had to kind of get rid of me, basically. And so they did that. And when Ross, I mean, there was a plan, a 5-year plan.
mm.
Okay, I am just going to turn off my phone. I don't know why I didn't do that earlier. I thought
Totally
putting it
cool.
on do not
Don't worry about
disturb
it.
would be good
It
enough.
happens.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
I have a dog
Okay.
that barks. It all we're all
Okay, there
doing
you go.
the best we can.
That's why we get to edit the audio.
Exactly.
Um, so then all of a sudden it was kind of like connecting the dots and seeing that with the merger, the minute the congregation agreed and said, let's do this thing, and all the, the new entity was set up and everything was, the new board and all of that, then all of a sudden they come in with no notice and cut his pay in half.
Mm.
Wow,
And
it
I'm
was
like,
exactly the same.
exactly.
That
And
must have really activated you.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, and there were three very specific things that were exactly the same between my losing my first publishing company and him losing his, uh, his position in that new um, merger of a church. And it was like, wow. The scripture came back to me, your battle is not with flesh and blood.
Mm.
And that was kind of what made me start thinking, wait a minute. Okay, if my battle's not flesh and blood, what is at work in this situation? And that's where I started seeing what was done to me 20 years earlier and what was done to my husband. And it was like, holy camole, it is
Wow.
exactly the same. And so that was what birthed the No Longer Hidden book because I just realized you cannot resist what you don't recognize. And I was
Yeah.
not
Totally.
recognizing
Totally.
that
Yeah.
unholy influence that.
Right.
And so, but the interesting thing was that was what set me free to be able to forgive them
Yeah.
because it's like,
Yeah.
wow, I got duped by that same unholy influence. They got duped by it. Okay, I can be okay with that. And it was just the most uh compelling turnaround just from understanding what I was dealing with. And it just made all the difference. And the interesting thing was we had a book uh, in 1997 as part of Point Man that we published called Behind Enemy Lines.
Mhm.
And the whole book was taking the Viet Cong guerrilla warfare, what the way they waged war in Southeast Asia, and comparing it to the way our enemy, the bad guy who is always at work against what God wants to do, uh, that it's a very, very similar. And I was not, I wasn't, I didn't know anything about the Vietnam War. I didn't know anything about warfare. I didn't know anything. I didn't know the difference between conventional warfare and guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare is
Wow.
very
Yeah.
clandestine, in the dark, in the shadows. You don't know where the bullets are coming from, messes
Right.
with your mind. I mean, it's total psychological warfare. Like they had Jane Fonda, right? Taking
Yeah.
their side, making the guys who are there risking their lives feeling like they're worthless because like people are turning on them, their
Right.
country's turning on them, yeah, all of that. I didn't understand any of that. So to see, wow, these similarities are uncanny. And so we put that book out in 1997, and then things all blew apart with my ex-husband. And I knew for years I needed to get that book back into print because it was so dramatic and such a great teaching tool to understand, you know, there are unholy forces out there that do, I mean, you just look at our country, causes division, causes hate, cause all the things that are just so ridiculous, but we don't always realize where it's coming from.
Yeah. No, yeah. It's interesting because we didn't preface this, but you and I had a conversation a couple of months ago. And so
Mm.
you had told me about losing your first publishing, and we went a little deeper, just you and I, on that conversation. And so as soon as you said that thing about your husband losing, I mean, essentially his church when he merged, wow, that is so fascinating. And so that's the hidden piece, right? The hidden piece was, or maybe I should ask, I shouldn't say. So was the hidden piece, did you realize you also maybe had not yet forgiven the original people that took your publishing company from you as well? Or do you
Uh,
just didn't realize how that it had happened to you once before?
Well, I had forgiven them. I mean,
Okay.
and I had gone through my own, okay, so what do I need to own here? Like,
Sure.
I can point at them and say they completely ripped me off, which they did. They knew what they were doing. There was no question about it.
Right.
But I also ignored red flags.
Mm,
I didn't, so I had to own my own part and say, you know what? What they did was wrong, but I had some things here that I have to take responsibility for and I have to own. And that helped me in my own healing because I wasn't just a victim.
right.
I did have a part to play in that, and I ignored the red flags, and I did some things that I should not have done that made me vulnerable to that deception.
Right.
So, but I think the big thing with this is I realized what was behind it, what was really going on. And it was in the same town. I mean, Enumclaw, Washington, little town at the base of Mount Rainier, that hole where I lost my publishing company to a husband and wife who were not,
Oh,
they were not good people.
Right.
They knew what they wanted. They wanted my company. They just worked all sorts of division and destruction, and they have a trail behind them, which of course I never did my due diligence to find out who in the world these people were.
Mm.
But to realize, okay, I fell for that same deception that this the younger pastor and his wife did. So I had quite a bit more grace for them, realizing
mm,
this is not just they came in and were going to steal the church from Ross. That wasn't who they were.
Right.
And the interesting, and I don't know, you may want to cut this out, but I'll just say it anyway. What started me on this rabbit trail was I remembered that the house that this younger pastor and his wife purchased 12 years earlier and we're still living in was a house that was rented by some of the guys in that cult, whatever you want to call it. It was a cult. And that was when I went,
So wait a minute.
oh,
Some of the people that took your publisher away also lived in the house that these two
well,
cats.
before
Right, right,
wow.
right,
they had
right.
moved
But
out.
like it was the same house.
Yes. And that
Wow.
was where I'm like, okay, this is just a little bit too uh like woo woo
Yeah,
almost
yeah,
like
yeah.
right,
You
but
can't say coincidence because that's too
exactly.
crazy to be a
There was
coincidence, so to
no
speak.
coincidence. But the point
Wow.
was, whatever that unholy spirit that was, just trying to destroy my life, trying to destroy my, to all of a sudden go, well, here's tangible. This is not just like my idea that it must be a demon or whatever.
Right.
But it was, wait a minute, the same people who were absolutely uh, overly influenced by that unholiness lived in that same house that that pastor bought. And
That's
it was just like blew my ever-loving mind. And that was where it was like, okay,
Mm.
so often we just go, oh, well, that's just me, or oh,
right.
we blame
Yeah.
things on things that have nothing. And there is an unholy spirit, there is a spirit realm
Yeah.
out there, and they are not good.
Gosh.
That is
Oh my
such a
gosh.
fascinating story.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to get to the wounded decision making.
Okay.
And the reason I want to dig into that, because I mean, so many things I'm listening to you and thinking about things that have happened to me work wise. Like we obviously own a business and things have gone well between us, but we've had things going on in our lives where we're like, so even when you're not wounded in the business, you could be making wounded decisions about the business, right? And
Right.
but I've had just a career in nonprofit before where I can and startup stress and people who weren't good actors. So I want to dig into that because I think a lot of our listeners are women, often in big transitions, and a lot of them are making major decisions right now about careers, relationships, and what this next chapter looks like. So I really want to hear your definition of wounded decision making, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Well, when I came out the other end of these people who stole my publishing company, my first publishing company, who were not well-intentioned, who were, they were absolutely, it was, I would call it 13 years of spiritual abuse.
Mm.
And he was a narcissist. I mean, there's a lot to it. But once my eyes were opened, I had to say, Lord, what the heck was that about? And how did I mean, like I wasn't some wet behind the ears 17-year-old that got sucked into this crazy thing. What happened there? How did I get to this place where, they talked me into divorcing my husband, not talking to my kids, doing all the, just letting them take my publishing company for $10? It was a $3.5 million company. And I'm like, okay, what was that? Because it defies logic. And I was I'd started and scaled 3 or 4 companies very well before that. So it wasn't like I was, just,
A hayseed, as they say.
yeah, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the Lord in this, I was just praying, like, Lord, you got to show
Mm.
me what's going on here. And he reminded me of a time early in Point Man where 2 other Vietnam veteran wives and we were all getting together trying to figure this PTSD thing out. And we were like, we went away to a cabin for the weekend and we were just like, what is this? Because we understood the physical PTSD ramifications, getting triggered and adrenaline and all of that. We understood the mental health piece of being suicidal and being angry and all of that. But we didn't quite have the spiritual piece down. We were just struggling and wanting to see what that was. And at that point, I realized that most of us, here we were, Vietnam veteran wives, they kind of think they have a corner on the market because they went to Vietnam and saw all this stuff. And I kind of went, I don't think they have a corner on the market. I think we have our own PTSD and we don't even recognize it.
Mm.
And I'm feeling like we, our wounds are like controlling us.
Mm.
And so that was just me kind of verbal processing. And um, all of a sudden, the scripture came to mind. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. That's in Psalms 147:3, I think it is. And so I looked it up and because it's Psalms, it comes from Hebrew words. So I dug down on the Hebrew word, looked it up in the back of my Bible, and it said, Atstabeth, that was the Hebrew word. It is an idol.
Mm.
And I'm like, huh. So idols are things that basically control us because we're more interested in that than anything else. And I'm like kind of connecting the dots and going, wow, if we're not getting healing for what, like, I had all sorts of trauma growing up. I mean, I could not, say, oh, I had a great life. No, I had some major trauma that I had never dealt with. And all of a sudden, I started kind of connecting the dots and going, huh, yeah, those things, because they're still untended to, I am reacting oftentimes out of what's being triggered, not what's actually happening in real time. And so that's what God reminded me of when I asked him, what did I do? How did I get here? He reminded me that he showed me that. And then he expected me to do something with it, like do
Mm.
the hard work of getting some healing for my sexual abuse as a child, for my, abortion when I was 18 that my dad forced on me, I was married to a wife beater who broke my arm while I was nursing my 6-month-old. A ton of trauma that had never been dealt with. And it was like, okay. That was on my part, that was disobedience because I knew what I was supposed to do with that information. It wasn't, yes, it was for the women we were working with, but that was for me.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
And so realizing then that those kinds of, trauma in our life that really have not been dealt with, it can rear its ugly head and we don't even know where it's
Because
coming from.
that's the wound is in Hebrew idol. Is that,
Yeah.
am I remembering that? That's what you
Yep.
said, right? So,
Yep.
yeah, so unhealed trauma becomes the idol that is controlling you.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
And I I mean, my medication of choice was always work, being
Mm,
successful. That was my way of keeping that at bay. So I didn't have to feel that pain again. I don't want to, but I needed to. So that was a huge aha moment for me to realize, okay, I can't just blame these people who took advantage of me for 13 years
right.
because I set myself up for that by not doing what I was supposed to do. When I connected all those dots and saw, okay, I got my own healing. I need to go get some help for this.
I mean, I think, we're in a day and age where the idea of trauma is so much more prevalent, right? We know it's luckily, thank God, right, talked
Mhm.
about more. However, again, you look back and you go, well, gosh, I had sexual abuse. I was forced to have an abortion, and other things that again I won't talk about that you and I talked about. And so you knew those things happened, but you didn't get the healing. So there are other women, our listeners, who have had unfortunately similar situations. So how do they know that they are having making a wounded decision? Like, sort of, what does that look like, or how can they catch themselves? Because you
Mm,
kind of, in my the way I'm hearing the story, you kind of accidentally caught yourself,
I did. I
right?
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when some of the things to look for, I think, is when we get so busy, we just stay busy all the time. So
Mm,
because normally if we aren't busy and things are quiet, then that's when kind of things come to the surface. And so really learning to be be in tune with what is coming to the surface and be willing to get, there's nothing wrong with getting help for that and
sure.
having someone to process that with.
Okay, yeah. So if you're looking at yourself and you're realizing you're self-medicating, for you it was work, but for some people it's shopping or drinking or whatever,
Yep.
gambling,
Yep.
like all the different ways we self-medicate.
Yep.
And sometimes binge watching television is perfectly fine, but if it's not serving you, then you're self-medicating. So it's taking at noticing when you're doing that and taking the step back and asking yourself why, what's underneath that.
Yeah. Because,
Okay.
when and a lot of times I have to go to maybe one of my brothers and say,
Mm,
did, what was going on at this time in our life? Because I have a really bad memory. So, and I think part of that is I think God does that for us and
yeah,
allows a lot of things to be hidden until we're ready to
absolutely.
process them. So sometimes I've had to just kind of go back and try and piece things together and kind of understand what was going on and get other people's take on, you know, because there's a lot I don't remember.
Yeah. Interesting.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm curious, like a lot of women we talk to and who listen, regardless of their spiritual background, describe that feeling that you're kind of touching on, which is like being their own worst enemy
Hmm.
or just patterns that keep repeating no matter how hard they try to change them. Is that kind of what you're getting at
Oh
with
yeah.
this?
And
Okay.
that is also kind of what I tried to dig deeper in the No Longer Hidden book, because when we don't recognize that we have a narrative going on in our head of, you know, like I can never do anything right or whatever
Mhm.
the self-talk is, that replacing that lie for the truth is, a
Yeah.
huge step forward in silencing those narratives in our head.
Well, and also this just you're talking so much about self-compassion for people in trauma? Because we experience a different type of trauma around here with my son's seizures and injuries and things we've been through. And there are times when Lisa's really, a patient friend and partner. I'll be like, I have this narrative that I can't function professionally sometimes when I'm going, like, it's like I got to take myself off the track of life and just be in trauma, which is not really like a conscious thought, but it is a subconscious feeling that makes you feel like you can't function, or you can't be reliable, or you can't, like, there's just a lot of negative self-talk that could happen if I didn't do this work and know how to take care of myself, because you can just kind of feel like, oh, I'm damaged, or this is like we're in a damaging time, I can't be part of things. So I feel like
Oh,
you're touching on that too.
yeah, and to have a little grace for yourself and compassion for yourself, like the stuff that we go through, that I mean, when you have a child that's, that's some scary stuff to have, and a lot of stress to have to be carrying. And sometimes we have to just step away and say, just for my sanity, I need to get a little quiet time. I need to just really um, be still. And
Mm,
instead, no, I have to work when I got this got to get done, this got to get done. Guess what? The fires are gonna be burning tomorrow. It's not gonna burn down overnight. And we have to have that compassion for ourselves and say, you know what? Let me go find some water somewhere where I can just look at the water and sit on a bench and get some sunshine and, you know, take care of myself.
Mm.
so to be able to recognize these patterns, it's really about some stepping away and some quiet time. Is there anything else that sort of happens inside someone before they can really see these patterns clearly? Because without the recognition, right, you can't, as you said, you can't fix something you don't know exists.
Right, right. Well, and I always have to go back to prayer just because that's where I get clarity on
Sure.
what's going on with me. But just to be able to um, start to recognize, like take some notes and journal and do some things where you're actually writing down, okay, when this happens, like as an example, I have a stepson. So it's my new husband's son who is just very combative.
Mm,
And when he raises his voice and sounds like he's starting a fight, I feel that my heart starts racing. I just want to get out of there. I mean, it's the fight,
but
flee,
yep.
you know,
Freeze. Yep.
freeze, fawn. So
Yep.
all of those things, like I think it's really good to educate ourselves on typical responses when we have PTSD and when we have
Mm,
some trauma and we get triggered. What does that look like? And really be able to write down, okay, if I'm going into fight mode, I want to just tell them, I mean, like really give them what for.
yeah.
Or if I want to just run and get away, go not be around the people that I need to be around, but I don't care. I got to get away. So really kind of getting a handle on some of those things to see. I mean, I know I did it's called Brave Enough to Change, and it's a small group, trauma informed kind of Bible study.
Hmm.
And they did a whole testing in there of, you know, what level of trauma. There's a bunch of different types of trauma. And that was so helpful for me to see, okay, this is normal
Right.
for me to have this kind of response. So we don't need to shame ourselves for having those responses, but we want to try and do something with it and get whatever help we need, whether it's just, one person we can trust that we can
Mm.
process with. A lot of times when we say it out loud, it's like all of a sudden, huh, okay, that wasn't really what I
It
meant.
loses its power. Yeah, or
It
right.
does.
Yeah. It's just I'm struck just because I feel like as you somewhat referenced earlier, we are living in a time right now where so many people are traumatized in real time. Immigrants, marginalized society, people, women, LGBTQ. It's a rough, rough time. And so it's one thing to be able to go back and look at the trauma you experienced years ago and be able to sit quietly and recognize, oh, where you might get activated in other ways. But gosh, I worry, I really, really worry about what we're going to be seeing down the pike in these years
Yeah.
as these people who are being traumatized now are still walking this earth, because they may not have the luxury or the ability to take that time and get that clarity.
Right. Right. And the other thing that we need to kind of keep in our minds is, you know, we had the pandemic. We had
Yeah.
all of these losses,
Hmm.
whether it was high school kids didn't get to do their graduation or just all the losses that came during that time that most of us haven't processed.
I've
And
been saying
because,
that for years. We are going to
yeah,
be dealing with the blowback of COVID for our natural lives, if not our
yep,
children's, for sure. And we
yep,
don't even know the trauma that we haven't processed from that. No
exactly.
question. No question.
And yeah.
Oh, Carrie, you're on mute. I'm sure you just said something beautiful.
I just said, and like we had that trauma we hadn't gotten to yet, and now there's like daily trauma being piled on
Right.
now. And
Right.
yeah, there's
Right.
so much.
I mean, I
Mm.
have to just get off social media most of the time
Carrie
because
has, yeah.
I can't
No,
Yeah.
I'm
I
not
just
off. I just give myself breaks. I give
yeah.
Yeah.
myself like where I take it off my phone,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, your
Mm.
book sounds phenomenal. And we've got all your links. We'll definitely be putting all of that in. And is there, I'm sorry, I forget because I looked, Carrie's put it together, but do we have a link for the Vietnam one?
That is, well, the Vietnam one isn't still in print,
Okay. Okay.
but the No Longer Hidden is a remake of that
Oh,
with
okay.
more current, like I tell the story of the pastor and his wife and that connection and all. I mean, so
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Okay. Good. Good.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Um, if there's someone listening who knows she's been making decisions from a wounded place and she's tired of it but doesn't know where to start, and maybe we could like you just for a minute could touch on your words on forgiveness, but like what would you say to her?
Boy, I would say be kind to yourself and approach it with kind of a heart of wanting to understand why why you're reacting the way that you are and what what kind of boundaries do you need to put in place to stay, to stay in a place of um, sanity. Sanity doesn't sound like the right word, but to just be at
I was
peace.
going to say peace was the word that came to mind. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And really
Mm,
have someone that you can trust,
Yeah.
that you can talk to, that isn't going to use your words against you or try and tell you, just get over it. There's unfortunately way too much of that
Yeah.
bad advice given. Um,
Or try to fix you.
or tr absolutely, absolutely. And
You just
we
need
all
somebody to
need
bear
that.
witness.
Yeah, someone to sit with you and
Yeah.
let you weep if you need to weep or whatever.
Yeah. Mm.
I love that.
Yeah. Thank you. So it's funny because before we started recording, we asked you what your song was, and it took you a second. But now, as we've had this conversation, it seems like exactly the right song. You picked Tell Me Something Good by Shaka Khan and Rufus. And I can't think of anything better when you're like, that song is so spectacular. Um, and when you're thinking about trying to get clarity, on the other side of that, you do kind of just want the lightness of please just tell me something good for the love of Pete.
Exactly. Exactly. And, there is a scripture that I always just hold on to. It's Romans 8:28, and it just says, God works all things together for good.
Mm,
Bad things, good things, crazy things, he will bring good out of it. But what I find is that most time it's through the hard things that we're refined and we come to a place where we can actually help somebody else that's maybe going through something similar. And so I'm always kind of taking okay, what can I learn from this? This is
Hmm.
hard. I don't
Yeah.
like this. But what can I learn from it? How can I be a better person and someone that can help others um, from what I'm experiencing right now that I'm not enjoying?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is certainly a way to get through a hard time is to, not sort of bypass your feelings around it, but recognize, okay, on the other side of this, I will be able to help someone else um, because I have experienced this. Again, we had these interviews yesterday on Potapalooza, and there was a couple of different times where the women had gone through something, and that's why they were coaching or they were creating or whatever. And I said two different times, like, oh, I hate that you had to go through that to get here, and yet, ta-da, like, thank
Yeah,
goodness, you know.
exactly. And
Mm,
I look back on that 13 years of just losing everything and go, you know what? Because of owning my piece,
sure.
the three things that I saw, those were on me, and growing from that and seeing where I was vulnerable, because unhealed trauma makes us vulnerable to
Mm,
deception. That was a huge takeaway that I
Mm,
got from that. And to realize that and go, you know what? I wouldn't trade it. As horrible as it was, I wouldn't trade that because of who I am now.
yeah.
wow. I
Because I
like
was
that.
pretty,
Unhealed trauma makes us susceptible to deception.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Wow.
writer downer, as our
Sure
mentors used to
is.
say.
This has been so rich. I'm really grateful for your honesty and your wisdom. We will put all your links in the show notes, as Lisa said, so people can find you. I just really have enjoyed this and kind of it's really resonating.
Oh, well, it was a delight to be able to kind of have a bumpy start and then
Yep.
communicate and come to a place where here we are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because of a mistake I made, this ended up happening. We won't go into it, but we actually, I'll say this. Carrie and I did an episode about repair not too long ago, and it really kind of my point of it came from this. So often people make a mistake and they try to, but I did this, or but you did this, or I was trying this. And I had a moment with you where I had responded to an email that was, and I thought I was emailing Carrie, and I wasn't mean, but I wasn't nice. I wasn't
Snarky.
kind. It was snarky. Snarky is a perfect word. Very snarky. And my initial reaction was, oh, I'm going to say, well, I didn't mean to send that to you. Of course, I didn't mean to send it to you. And instead, I just apologized, which led to a very nice back and forth. We
Yeah.
got on a Zoom, and I was like, you know what? If you're willing to be on the pod, I'd love to have you on. And this has been a fantastic conversation. So I will say once again, in out loud, I'm so grateful that you forgave my snarkiness. And I'm so glad we got on that conversation.
I am too. I am too. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely our pleasure.
it's been a pleasure. Really, your story is so compelling. I think it's going to land for a lot of people.
Hmm.
What I really like about how transparent and vulnerable you are is so often, especially as women who are just like programmed to kind of keep things together and present something else different to the world. I think there's too much like shame and secrecy around the things we've been through. And then we try to make decisions and operate as if those things aren't happening. And so I
Mm.
love the permission you're giving people
Hmm.
to really embrace it and let that be part of, who they are. So thank you. Before
You're
we go,
welcome.
if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, it would mean the world to us if you just take 30 seconds to leave us a rating and a written review. It is one of the most powerful ways you can help us grow and reach more women who need conversations like this.
And this episode in particular, like if you recognize yourself or any of your friends, if you're that person who bears witness for a friend who's going through this, this would be the perfect opportunity for you to share this episode and check out all of the links in the show notes so you can get some support, at least in book form from Athena as well. All right. I think that's complete for today. Again, thank you so much, Athena.
Oh, you're
It's been
welcome.
a real pleasure.
And thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having me.
You're
Our
welcome.
pleasure.
All right, everyone. We'll be back next week. Thank you.
Bye.